You don't fail because you're sad. You suffer because you're obsessed with not being sad. Marcus Aurelius understood this brutal paradox centuries ago. The more you demand happiness, the more life punishes you with despair. What he discovered was so unsettling that modern psychology is only now beginning to catch up. The question is, will you keep chasing the illusion, or will you learn the one shift that could save your soul? The pursuit of happiness has been promised to us as the highest goal, the final reward, the ultimate measure of a life well lived. Yet history, philosophy, and even modern science whisper a disturbing truth. The harder you chase joy, the more it slips from your grasp. This is the paradox that Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor of Rome, saw with chilling clarity. Imagine the weight he carried. He was not just a man, but the ruler of the known world, commander of armies, guardian of borders, constantly under attack. A leader forced to watch his empire bleed under war, plague, and betrayal. He had access to power, wealth, and pleasures beyond imagination. If happiness could be purchased, conquered, or seized, Marcus should have been drowning in it. And yet, in the privacy of his journal, he wrote words that revealed a soul wrestling with despair, suffering, and the unbearable truth of human existence. Marcus was not a man who sought joy in the ways most of us do today. He understood something darker, that the relentless hunger for happiness is a trap, a cycle that breeds only misery. While others chased pleasure, Marcus chased understanding. While others prayed for joy, he trained himself to see joy as dangerous. His notes, which we now call meditations, were never meant to be published. They were reminders to himself, private warnings written in the dead of night, while the world expected him to smile as emperor. Again and again, he returned to the same message. Stop demanding happiness. Stop expecting the world to grant you bliss, because it won't. Because the very act of chasing it guarantees disappointment. We think we are modern, enlightened, and free of superstition, yet we repeat the same mistake every day. We scroll, we consume, we buy, we post, we compare, all in the hope of catching a spark of happiness that disappears as soon as we hold it. The harder we grasp, the faster it vanishes. This is the trap Marcus Aurelius saw long before psychology named it. He understood that joy cannot be forced, hunted, or chained. It arrives only when we stop demanding it, when we live aligned with truth, not illusion. But that raises the terrifying question. If joy is not to be chased, what then should guide our lives? Marcus's answer was not comfort, not pleasure, not escape, but something far more unsettling. He urged himself to embrace duty, resilience, and virtue, not because these would bring happiness, but because they freed him from being enslaved by it. Here lies the paradox that most of us cannot accept. That joy, when made into a goal, destroys itself. And this was the emperor's secret. He had learned that chasing happiness was the surest way to guarantee misery. But why? What could possibly make joy so fragile that the search for it ensures its death? Marcus believed the harder you chase joy, the more it escapes. But why? Rome was the beating heart of the ancient world. Yet in the age of Marcus Aurelius, it was also a city gasping for air. To understand why Marcus's writings carry such urgency, we must place ourselves in his world. The empire he ruled was not the stable paradise history sometimes paints, but a fragile beast trembling under the weight of crisis. The frontiers burned with endless wars, enemies pressing from the north and east. A deadly plague swept through cities, leaving markets silent and homes abandoned. Even inside the palace walls, betrayal lurked, with friends who could turn into assassins overnight. Imagine sitting at the very peak of human power, wearing the crown of Caesar, and knowing that none of it could protect you from loss, disease, or despair. Marcus was no ordinary ruler. He was a philosopher king, the rare soul who sought wisdom not in marble palaces, but in the recesses of his own mind. In Meditations, his private journal, we glimpse not a triumphant conqueror, but a weary man, reminding himself each dawn that he must face cruelty, selfishness, and lies with dignity rather than despair. He wrote as though lecturing his own soul. Do not expect life to be easy. Do not demand that it be joyful. Demand only that you meet it with strength. His empire was in crisis, and yet his greatest struggle was not with barbarians or conspirators, but with the very human longing for happiness. Marcus Aurelius lost several of his children, burying them with his own hands. He endured illness, pain, and endless campaigns on the frozen frontiers, far from the comforts of Rome. He could have escaped into luxury, drowning his grief in feasts, pleasures, or distractions. But instead, he chose a harder path. He told himself that happiness was a phantom, that to chase it in a world so fragile was to set himself up for endless suffering. The man who ruled millions was writing not about how to enjoy life, but about how to survive it. This was not weakness, it was clarity. And it is here that we begin to see the foundations of what I call the happiness trap. Marcus Aurelius was surrounded by people who believed joy could be purchased, stolen, or conquered, yet he saw the emptiness of that pursuit. Even as he wore the crown of the most powerful empire on earth, he warned himself daily that the craving for joy was the true enemy. To us, this may sound bleak, but to Marcus, it was the only way to be free. He had witnessed too many powerful men destroyed not by war, but by their hunger for pleasure, their obsession with joy, their refusal to accept that life is suffering. And so, in his private notes, Marcus sharpened a philosophy that would echo across centuries. Do not chase happiness. Do not expect life to give you joy. Instead, prepare yourself to endure, to remain unbroken when the world offers nothing but pain. Only then, he believed, could you avoid the trap that swallows kings and commoners alike. We live in an age Marcus Aurelius could never have imagined. Yet his warning about the pursuit of joy feels more urgent now than ever. Look around, and you will see an empire of glass screens and endless promises. The modern world has transformed happiness into its most profitable industry. Every advertisement, every influencer, every shining post on social media whispers the same seductive lie. That joy is just one more purchase away, one more achievement away, one more transformation away. We are told that a happier version of ourselves waits behind the next subscription, the next luxury item, the next motivational program. But like moths chasing light, we burn ourselves against the illusion. The self-help shelves are flooded with books promising 10 steps to joy, 5 hacks for positivity, or guaranteed systems to achieve permanent bliss. Wellness gurus teach us to smile more, to think positively, to reject negativity. Social media turns personal lives into highlight reels, where everyone else seems radiant, fulfilled, and permanently lit with joy. And in our private silence, we wonder why we feel empty while everyone else appears so alive. But here lies the brutal truth. This happiness industry does not exist to make us happy. It exists to keep us chasing. The more we buy, the more we scroll, the more we compare, the more money and power this system gains. Marcus warned that the pursuit of joy enslaves the soul. Today, it also enslaves economies. We are no longer chasing happiness. We are feeding it as a business model. Consider the way platforms measure our worth. Likes, hearts, shares, streaks. These tokens of approval masquerade as joy, but they operate like chains. We log in not to connect, but to see if our life still measures up. And when it doesn't, we plunge into despair, then buy into another promise that joy can be restored. This cycle is the modern form of what Marcus called enslavement to desire. And like the emperors of Rome who drowned themselves in luxury, we too risk drowning in illusions sold to us daily. Imagine someone who climbs the corporate ladder, earning promotions, buying luxury cars, filling their home with symbols of success. For a while they shine, posting photos, collecting compliments, enjoying the thrill of comparison. But each new achievement feels smaller, emptier, less satisfying than the last. Soon, the victories taste like ash. Burnout arrives, anxiety creeps in, and the illusion collapses. What remains is not joy, but exhaustion. This story is not rare. It is the default of modern life. We mistake happiness for status, possessions, or attention. And when those things fail to deliver lasting fulfillment, we blame ourselves rather than the lie we were taught to chase. Marcus Aurelius saw this trap centuries ago. He understood that external achievements, no matter how grand, cannot protect us from misery. He was emperor of Rome, and yet he told himself daily that joy cannot be forced, cannot be bought, cannot be conquered. And if that was true for him, ruling the greatest empire of his time, how much more true is it for us, scrolling through glowing screens in search of a happiness that always seems just out of reach? The paradox Marcus Aurelius revealed becomes sharper when we examine it not just through philosophy, but through the lens of psychology. The pursuit of happiness seems noble, yet it contains a poison hidden at its core. Modern researchers call it the hedonic treadmill, the endless cycle where each burst of joy fades quickly, forcing us to run harder for the next one. What Marcus described in his journal as enslavement to desire is now measured in brain scans and dopamine spikes. When we achieve something, a new possession, a romantic victory, a moment of recognition, our brain floods us with a surge of reward. But the chemical balance resets almost instantly. What thrilled us yesterday becomes ordinary today, and soon, invisible tomorrow. The harder we chase that surge, the more fragile and desperate our joy becomes. This is why Marcus warned himself not to crave happiness. He understood that by demanding joy, we were training our minds to resist it. Imagine chasing your own shadow across the ground. The faster you run, the faster it retreats. The harder you stretch, the further it slips away. Happiness behaves the same way when it becomes a goal. The moment we say, "I must be happy," we plant the seed of misery, because our mind begins scanning for proof that we are not. And in that search, it finds endless evidence. Our bodies ache, our relationships stumble, our plans collapse, our hopes fade. The mind that is trained to demand happiness becomes a predator, hunting itself. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. He did not ask life to bring him joy. Instead, he reminded himself that life was pain, duty, and uncertainty, and that meaning could only be found by refusing to depend on happiness at all. To modern ears, this may sound bleak, but the science agrees. Studies show that people who obsess over being happy report lower well-being, more loneliness, and higher depression. The more they try to force joy, the less joy they actually experience. It is the paradox Marcus named in his private notes, now confirmed centuries later. The search for joy breeds only despair. But here lies the hidden opening, the secret Marcus left us. He did not say joy was impossible. He said it was impossible when hunted. Happiness cannot be chained or commanded. It arrives only as a byproduct, a shadow of something greater. That greater pursuit, Marcus insisted, is not joy, but virtue, resilience, and alignment with truth. When we stop demanding happiness, when we stop treating it as a goal, we create the space where it can appear naturally. Like a bird that lands in your hand only when you are still, not when you chase it. But this raises the question, if not joy, then what should we seek? If the pursuit of happiness is a trap, then what path remains? Marcus gave his answer, and it was not easy. He turned away from the glittering pleasures of Rome and toward the harsh discipline of the mind. He believed freedom was found not in chasing happiness, but in breaking its chains. This was the heart of his philosophy, and it remains the question we must confront today. If joy cannot be demanded, where does true strength come from? Marcus Aurelius was not a man who surrendered to despair, even though he believed happiness could never be forced. Instead, he offered an alternative path, one that modern minds often resist because it asks for strength rather than comfort. Instead of chasing joy, Marcus chased virtue. He urged himself to focus on duty, resilience, and alignment with nature. To him, freedom was not the ability to feel good all the time, but the ability to endure without breaking. He wrote again and again that the only thing we truly control is our own mind. Armies, fortune, even our own health may collapse, but our perception remains within reach. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. These were not empty words. Marcus wrote them while leading soldiers through freezing campaigns on the northern frontiers, while watching plague consume his empire, while burying his own children. He was not preaching luxury philosophy. He was clawing for survival. His answer was discipline, not comfort. The Stoic alternative is not glamorous. It does not promise instant joy or endless positivity. It demands that we stop asking life to be easy and start asking ourselves to be stronger. It asks us to replace "I must be happy" with "I must be resilient." And in that shift, something extraordinary happens. When you stop measuring life by how good it feels and start measuring it by how true you remain to yourself, happiness loses its power over you. You no longer rise and fall with its arrival or departure. Instead, you gain something far rarer: equanimity, the steady calm that cannot be shaken by fortune. Imagine someone who loses their job. The pursuit of happiness tells them they have failed, that their worth was tied to achievement, that they must scramble to rebuild joy through recognition or success. But the Stoic alternative offers another frame. Losing a job is painful, yes, but it is also a chance to test resilience, to discover strength, to align with a deeper purpose. Happiness may not appear immediately, but dignity and meaning can. And in time, joy returns. Not because it was chased, but because it arose naturally from living in alignment. This is the core of Marcus's teaching, that happiness, when released, becomes possible again. That joy, when no longer demanded, sneaks back into life as a side effect of meaning. This is not an easy path. It requires discipline, courage, and the willingness to let go of illusions that most of us are addicted to. But Marcus insisted that only this path leads to freedom. The Stoic alternative does not kill joy. It frees us from being enslaved by it. And that is why his words still haunt us today. Yet Marcus's warning does not end here. For he believed joy itself could become a trap, more dangerous than misery. History is filled with examples of lives consumed by the happiness trap. To make Marcus Aurelius's warning vivid, let us walk through 3 stories that echo across time. The first belongs to a ruler whose life collapsed under the weight of desire. Think of emperors and kings who inherited empires of gold, yet could never rest content. One such figure was King Midas, whose name has become a legend for greed. He begged for the power to turn everything he touched into gold, believing that ultimate wealth would deliver ultimate happiness. At first, he rejoiced as tables, walls, and treasures glittered with his new gift. But soon, the horror revealed itself. His food turned to metal. His drink hardened in his throat. Even his daughter, running to embrace him, became a lifeless statue in his arms. The very wish for happiness destroyed the source of all joy in his life. Marcus Aurelius would have pointed to this tale as proof that desire, when turned into obsession, becomes poison. The second story comes from our modern world. Picture a celebrity who reaches the peak of fame, adored by millions, drowning in wealth, and yet confesses in interviews that they feel empty, trapped, and exhausted. Their calendar is full. Their home is vast. Their name is everywhere. Yet each night they wrestle with despair. They chased happiness through the applause of strangers, only to discover that applause fades faster than smoke. Their joy was built on external validation. And when the lights dimmed, so did their reason to live. This mirrors Marcus's own warning, that the man who ties his peace to what others think has chained himself to an unstable master. The third story is closer to home, a story lived by ordinary people every day. A young professional, convinced that the path to happiness lies in achievement, sacrifices everything for career success. They work late nights, abandon friendships, postpone love, all for the sake of the next promotion, the next salary jump, the next title on their resume. Years pass. They collect trophies, but when they finally pause, they find themselves alone, burnt out, and unable to feel joy in the very success they thought would complete them. Their pursuit of happiness left them with ashes. Each of these stories, legendary, modern, and ordinary, reveals the same cruel pattern. When happiness becomes a demand, when joy is treated as a prize to be seized, it mutates into suffering. Marcus Aurelius saw this in the senators of Rome, in generals consumed by glory, in common citizens who longed for pleasure. He saw it in himself when grief tempted him to seek comfort in distraction. And so he wrote his warnings, not to scold, but to remind himself of the truth. Happiness pursued becomes misery. Yet the question still lingers, like a shadow at the edge of his words. If the pursuit of joy destroys it, what is left to guide us? How do we live without collapsing into despair? Marcus's answer, unsettling yet liberating, would take him deeper into a philosophy that does not promise bliss, but promises freedom. Marcus Aurelius never told himself to abandon hope. His message was not that joy is impossible, but that it cannot be the compass of a meaningful life. Instead of chasing the illusion of constant happiness, he turned towards something sturdier: equanimity, resilience, and purpose. To Marcus, the true measure of a life was not how often it felt good, but how faithfully it was lived. He urged himself to rise each morning, ready to meet cruelty with patience, loss with dignity, and hardship with strength. In doing so, he discovered a paradoxical freedom. By releasing the demand for happiness, he freed himself from the terror of losing it. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom. Studies show that people who seek meaning rather than happiness report greater well-being, deeper resilience, and longer-lasting satisfaction. Happiness is fleeting, but meaning endures. Marcus understood this long before research confirmed it. He knew that joy comes and goes like weather, but integrity remains a fortress. This is why his writings are filled with reminders not to expect life to be kind, but to expect ourselves to be strong. And here lies the path beyond happiness. It is not about escaping pain. It is about standing in the storm without collapsing. It is about finding strength in virtue, not distraction. It is about realizing that the mind, once disciplined, can withstand the chaos of the world. That is where hope lives, not in the promise of endless joy, but in the certainty that we can endure without breaking. If you have ever felt trapped in the endless chase for happiness, write this in the comments. I choose meaning over illusion. Because once you choose meaning, happiness loses its power to control you. It may arrive, it may leave, but you remain steady. That is the gift Marcus left us. And yet, he also issued one more warning. He believed the human mind carried a final danger, one so profound that it could either enslave or liberate us completely. A danger more powerful than the pursuit of happiness itself. What was this final warning? And why did Marcus fear it would consume those unprepared to face it? That is where we go next. Before you go, remember this. Marcus Aurelius showed us that chasing happiness is a trap, but there's another danger waiting in the shadows: our relationships. Carl Jung warned that the people closest to us can become the very chains that keep us trapped, draining our energy while disguising themselves as love. In my next video, we'll descend into the dark side of relationships, Jung on toxic attachments,